Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode Take Me. Today is going to be a bit medieval because this here is a very old tradition, embroidery. We all know it from movies. We have fun with it. In the last video I showed you how to make a bag
and she wanted to...
I'm going to decorate now, and I didn't go for the standard embroidery, but for the standard embroidery
that intense,
where we
now achieve a kind of three-dimensional effect
and lay a yarn. So it's also a kind of investment laying technique. And in a second here we secure it all. For this we usually take a somewhat thicker and a thinner banner, kind of like with the fish, through the shorter deadline. And it goes on like this. For example, I have here thicker ribbon and then with a fine yarn attached to my fabric. Let's move on to the materials. We definitely need needles depending on what kind of fabric we have here. Fabric that smells like cinnamon, that is costly woven, so where a thick needle fits through well and a thicker thread also fits through well. With, for example, I have a thicker needle in this embroidery thread, but a finer needle is also suitable if you want to work with finer yarn like I do here, for example. We accepted such a fine sewing machine, which I took double. But here, for instance, the loveliness, here I used ones with the big needles. Exactly. To thread the ribbon, I've taken it as the main element and secured it with finer wools. So take a look at which one you want to work with. I've got a few examples here. So wool scraps are great. This here could be sewn as the main yarn. You will surely not get this dragged through the dust here. We've got something nice here with clay like the sand color or even the linen. We've got everything now. Thanks again. Here and here I pulled it through the stick. I am happy. Yes, finer thread used to tie the ribbon. Here is something with a gradient. Here is something fluffy. We can obviously also move a frame. Here is another standard wool remnant from the cushion I knitted last time. So many different yarns there are.
We can now wake up again.
Embroidery, what we've already knitted. If you're interested in learning how to make such a leaf is the word, you can send a leaf or even a heart. Then take a look at Tolle Bole. I've recorded it all for you there. And of course, you can also incorporate buttons. Your imagination has absolutely no limits. Here I've worked with the ribbon. Look at what you have at home. I'm trying it out and would love to know how you got on. What the deal is with the pen, one that I would also like to link for you because I am quite excited about that thing. You will see that in the next game. I've started here already. As you can see, I've laid out a sort of fantasy shape like a rainworm, and I'm basically drawing with it. Tie this thread to my dust. If I want to, I can imagine a shape, especially if it's a real motif, a face, a focus, a tree, a plant. Then it can be helpful to draw the whole thing once, but please use a pen or chalk, which can either be washed out or something like this. That can be practiced. I'd be careful afterwards if I use something like fine wool, which is a bit... It's so thin that I can't iron my bag flat afterwards, at least not that spot. But then simply with heat or with steam right here at these spots, where maybe a bit of the pen is still visible. That's all for now. I have outlined it here lightly and will roughly follow this to complete my shape here. And for that, I of course need my fine yarn to wrap my ribbon around. For the best included, I take my fine yarn double here Basically, you can also use embroidery data. Everything that goes through the fabric and the needle can be tried out. So your imagination definitely knows no bounds here, and I'm trying it here. Yes, do not make it too long, so forearm length. It can be already, but I wouldn't make it much longer because then you'll tangle everything later, and you always have to be a bit careful not to. Like now, for example, with a bag like this, incorporating the handles or sewing in other fabric parts. Now, a too long corridor is not helpful. So I've doubled it, and now we have two different options. So we can either start from the bottom. In our fabric, we look for a place that's not super obvious. So we're stitching our yarn, I'd say right here. When I say I'm starting here, I would have to pull my intestine through to that extent. That's a little bit lift on the back, and then you stitch again at a spot that's very close. Pull through from the bottom back and forth about 3 times, always very close to the original entry point, and then the thread solidifies. So it's tight, and we also don't have a knot on the back. Anyone wanting to use the knot method and feeling more secure with it, I can show you how I like to tie knots here. My thread end once here like this over the middle of the needle. I secure the whole thing with my thumb and maybe pull my thread like this 5 to 7 times around the needle. Something like that. And now I can wrap the needle around here where I have the whole thing once down through the eyelet, over the thread coming out of this eyelet. Sometimes I need to be careful not to twist everything up here. I can use my little fingers to help with that.
And now it should,
in the end, and have formed nice firm knots. Thank you.
Now I'm stitching from
Down there where I want to continue, and another tip is having one hand under the fabric, or in this case in the pocket, and one hand beneath the fabric outside. Then they can work with each other and not against each other. Of course, now that I have the knot, I can pull until I feel the knot, but still, to secure the whole thing, maybe one more time or twice. Near the injection site again, especially when I have such chrome fabric here, it could of course be that such a pull the knot through if you'd accidentally pull on it too hard. So maybe back and forth a couple more times. Feel free to go through the knot with the needle too, but to secure everything well. And now again, just a brief info. Now, for example, I have to be careful not to twist something here and enter with my thread on the other side of the handle, but sunny here, and I'm going in here into the node. It's here. Please proceed to fine working, or at least between the two threads. Yes, okay. So now it's a bit tighter, and I can starting. I always try to stay more on the start with yarn, which I want to secure just so it all becomes a bit more invisible later on. And now I can work well along here. I've decided on a sort of earthworm here with pink ridges. So I'm not making it overly precise. You can, of course, if you wish. There are now various possibilities to embellish the whole thing. So one can try to do it very precisely, millimeter precise, centimeter precise. You can, of course, get a ruler counting aid. One can place crosses over here. I've put together about 2 stitches here with some neon yarn and have the yarn I set up. This fluffy wool mixed with mohair, pretty nice actually, and yes, you can make various pieces. Try variations. The principle remains the same, somewhat guided by it. Yarn that we lay down can also freestyle embroider, so really great modern forms and patterns. Symmetrical, asymmetrical. There are no limits to our imagination whatsoever. Yes, and that's how it goes on and on here. It's really extremely meditative. I'd say I'll just continue working here for a bit.
The principle is actually not
easy to understand, I think.
And then we can finish up.
now I've reached the end here, and yet I don't have enough thread left to wrap my end here like I did here. It looks a bit like a shoelace. That's why I'm going to secure my thread now, and I always do that when it's done. When I sort of reach the end, I'll pull the thread a few more times too. Close together through the fabric. You can do it about 3 times. Then I make sure that I thread the yarn, pull it through itself or through a knot depending on what's available on the back, but keep it simple. Secure it as well as possible. I think I've gone through it twice now, and I always do that too when possible, somehow kind of hidden under the yarn. I can paint my color here now. Until next time, take care. And maybe a second time or just another one for good measure. A question of my language. Depends a bit on what we're working with. And because it's just here as this is a yarn. Or if the ribbon offers a good grip, I now pull the needle through again and hide the rest of my thread here in the tape. So I pull the nail through here like this, and then can here cut on, and that should now be season for you too. So I've also given the little worm a back end and made myself a finish. That was a very fine sewing thread. This somewhat thicker yarn wraps around a solid area, but I also wanted to show today that depending on the fabric texture, that is depending on how coarse the fabric is, even such a thick yarn can also be used to be able to sew with yarns. So this would still work. So I could also here, as long as I secure it on the back. I knew it, use that for fastening as well. So take a look at what you've starched and also what you like. There are great wool vests, and yeah, what's available. It's a very intuitive job. Let the yarn decide which direction to go. But you can also pre-draw, as said. Do it the way that feels best for you. And then please let me know in the comments how it went and what you've added. So desired, yes, last tip. Let me think for a moment. Always secure the thread nicely at the back. If you have such fine wool, it won't be too strong. Not ironing, but rather working with the steam if you have it, getting the marking pencil out. And otherwise, experiment, experiment, experiment. I would be very happy to hear from you, and yes, see you next time. See you soon. Bye.